Okay, so this is about, rather than going through step by step and showing you every little bit of detail that I do in a painting, this is more about explaining the process of painting from start to finish. We're going to go out, find some good locations, take some sketchbooks with us and do a bit of work out there. Then we're going to come back to the studio, work those drawings up into bigger drawings, do some quick paintings, and then finally work those into larger paintings, which will hopefully have some good results at the end. So it's going to be a fairly informal look at the way I work, so it'll show you some of the mistakes I make as well, not just the finished thing. So this is about having fun with paint. We're not going to worry too much about pre-planning or pre-drawing, just seeing what the paint can do and editing while we go. I'm going to be using something called Atelier Interactive, which is an acrylic paint, but it's very different from any acrylic paint that you will have used before. You can go back to it at any point and get the colours that you've already put on working again. So you can go back, spray with water, re-blend everything, or even if it's been dry months, you can go back with an unlocking formula, respray it and get everything working again. So you can always go back and edit with this paint, so it's fantastic stuff. So I've had a wander up to Lincoln Cathedral. It's only a short walk from my studio. Going to go in and do some very quick tonal studies, some sketches. And what I really want to try and focus on is the play of light in the building. Now, the real beauty of working in a building like this is the strong contrast that you can get between light and dark. I found a little corner here that's got that real strong contrast. So what I'm going to do is make some quick sketches with charcoal, and then I'm going to do some tonal studies with just one tube of paint and a brush, just to kind of establish those lights and darks and set the scene. So what I'm going to do is firstly cover my entire piece of paper in charcoal. Okay, just a very quick base of charcoal, and then I'm going to subtract the light by using a putty eraser. So you've got a nice dark background, and then you're going to take away the highlights by using the eraser. So you get that nice strong contrast in your drawing straight from the off. So I'm using charcoal for this because what I want to do is work quite quickly and cover a large area. So sometimes when you're using a pencil or pen, you have to work quite hard to cover a large area of paper. So with charcoal, what you can do is just use nice, large, sort of expressive marks and get everything down really quickly, which sometimes is what you want to do on location. You don't always have the luxury of time or being able to stay in one place too long. The light might be changing or there might be things going on around you. So using charcoal, you can very quickly get your impressions down on paper. So I'm just looking where the lights are and then just going straight in onto that area of charcoal with the eraser, and then just using quite bold strokes, just lifting that charcoal out so you get that strong contrast between the light and the dark, which will start to give me those areas of highlight. And then I'll just go back in and start to put in the archways. I'm working very quick. I'm not worried too much about the perspective and all the angles at this level. All I'm trying to do is capture that contrast. So another problem with working on location, certainly in an environment like this, is that getting loads of paints out and loads of brushes is sometimes frowned upon. So what you can do if you want to make a tonal study using paint is just stick a tube in your bag and one brush and a water spray bottle, and then you can quite quickly do a little study with your paint and get the sort of basics down for you to work upon in your studios. Just burnt umber. So what I'm going to use that for is to get a very quick sort of tonal base down, just by spraying it with some water and dragging the paint around with my brush. So all I'm going to do is just squeeze some out, just so I've got a little reservoir of the paint on the side of my paper. And then what I'll do is just give my paper a quick spray, and then using a brush, I'm just going to go in and just pinch a bit of that paint from that reservoir on that side of the paper, and then just start to work with the paint to produce a very quick little tonal study. Okay, so Just again, trying to capture the lights and darks and the contrast. No detail at this point, not worried about the perspective and getting all the arches correct at this point. Just trying to get that nice contrast between the lights and the darks. Just establishing the contrast by working in the darks down in the bottom corner there. And where I've wet the paper, you can drag the paint out so you get these changes in tone. I'm just thinking tonally all the time, just trying to build up the contrast very quickly between the lights and the darks, starting to give the suggestion of these arches. Just using the moisture that's on the paper from when I sprayed it is allowing me to drag the colour down and get these nice warm sepia tones. Going back in, darkening these up, really building up the contrast now. So all I'm doing with the paint is varying the amount on the end of my brush, how much I'm using, just to establish those lights and the darks. So getting plenty on here in the foreground where it's really dark, the shadows are really intense, and then just where it's lighter towards the back, just using less paint on my brush and using the sort of dampness of the paper to thin the paint out, get the changes in values. Using water on your sketchbook, so if it starts to wrinkle up a bit or goes a bit damp, again, don't worry, use your sketchbook for getting ideas down and don't be too precious with it. It's all about getting what's in front of you down as quickly as possible when you're in a location like this, so you've got something to work from later. So, you know, don't worry about making a mess. And it really does help you get a sense of the tonal values of a subject if you limit yourself to using just the one colour. So just finished that quick tonal painting in the sketchbook now. And just before I leave, what I'm going to do is do some quick digital drawings on my iPad. Now, this is something I've only been doing recently, but it's very useful because you can have something like an iPad with you all the time when you go into locations and make quick sort of colour studies there, and you've got the full range of colours available to you by using a digital drawing program. So this is a touchscreen device. So although what I'm doing is a digital drawing, you're still using your fingers, you're still physically making the marks, but the advantage is you have a full palette of colours without having to squeeze paint out on a palette when you're on location. So all I'm going to do is try very quickly to get the basic colours that I've got down here and the ones that I haven't been able to capture with my charcoal drawing or my tonal study. Okay, so thinking more about the greens on this grass and some of these lovely sort of pastel colours moving back towards that bottom corner. So just using the advantage of having all these colours on here to get them down and give me a very strong reference for when I get back to the studio. You couldn't have all these paints with you at one time, so having that ability to get any colour I want and match it to the subject in front of me is a huge advantage for making quick colour studies. And you've got the full advantage of having a whole range of different brushes and brush marks that you can create. So you're not really limited in any way to what you can do. The sky's the limit, but it is a very useful tool just for making quick sketches, like we've said, just to give you an idea of some of the colours. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So got 3 different drawings, a digital drawing, a tonal study and a charcoal drawing, and they're going to allow me when I get back to the studio to work this into a finished painting and give me the sort of basic clues that I need to get the colours down, get the composition down and get that nice strong contrast between the light and the dark. So I just got back to the studio and what I'm going to do is work up some of those drawings that we made in the cathedral, and I've just got some paper ready to roll here, some charcoal, and I'm just going to make a larger version of that charcoal sketch that I made. So I'm just very quickly going to start to block in using charcoal the basic composition. So obviously with this viewpoint you've got to give some consideration to perspective, but for this I'm going to just use a few guiding lines so that I know roughly where things are going to go. So we've got a big line coming down here heading to roughly this point of the paper, so I'll put a line about there, all in darkness this area, so that's going to be nice and dark, so just give a sense of that by blocking that in with my charcoal. And then if we just bring a line down here from the top of the paper and a line to there from the bottom. It's not absolutely accurate, but it's enough to get started with. You know, with something that's as complicated as doing these arches, you could spend hours doing this. You know, you could do it with your rulers and protractors and all these things, but these guidelines will be enough to give us a sense of what was there. So just gonna block in these darks that were in this area, make that nice and dark. And this column in the foreground is going to be the darkest point in the picture. That needs to be very dark. Just blocking that in. Nice and dark there. And the arch comes up here. Making some long sweeps with the charcoal where the roof of the cloister area was. So they're going to get darker as they come towards the front. So just applying a bit more pressure to the paper as I come forwards there. And you know, with charcoal, you know, it's a fairly loose medium. So if you want, you can use a brush. I'm just going to use a brush to blend and soften some of those edges and just help move the colour around, or a rag or something, just to spread the charcoal around on the paper, help blend all the tones together. So I'm just looking where the arches fall, just mapping those out very quickly. Because of the perspective in the picture, they're bunching up as they get further back, so you just need to bear that in mind. So those arches at the back are slightly closer together and then further apart and darker as we come forwards. Bringing the lines down, straightening them up at the bottom, and some nice dark tones running along the foreground as well, so just getting those in the picture as well. With the charcoal, of course, you've always got that ability to go back in with your eraser, take areas out, take away areas of highlight, and then just go back in and firm up any details that you need to. I'm just using this charcoal to make some dark marks where there were tables and chairs just in the foreground, and just using it to create the silhouette of the tables and chairs, really. I'm not trying to describe in detail everything that was there. And just to finish off, just going to pick out a few highlights with the eraser. So some light running along here. Just use the eraser to take away areas of the charcoal. You get that lovely, nice sort of ghost-like quality to charcoal when you've erased areas and moved them around. It's that real soft, chalky grey, which is quite interesting in its own right. And you can see through the arches where the cathedral is in the background, but for this drawing I'm going to leave that pretty much white because all I want to focus on is the contrast between the dark pillars and the light coming from behind them. So I'm just going to leave that as it is for the moment, but I will just go in and darken the edges of these arches, just firm them up a bit. A few more indications of the table and chairs in the distance there. Right, that's worked up one of these charcoal sketches then, made it come to life a bit, and that's just helped me again go back and look and re-familiarise myself with the subject matter and get an idea of that strong contrast between the light coming from behind those pillars. Often if you find you've been away from the location for a while, just going back through your photos and sketches, even if you're not doing anything else with them, just refreshes your memory of where you've been. That's really what we're doing with these, just refreshing our memories, working out some of the problems that we might have when doing the final painting.